Hey Indie Filmmakers, I'm Nick Bodmer.
I'm Griffin Hammond, and on this week's episode, I tried to pilot my drone in a difficult environment. I bet you can guess what happened next.
Plus, your questions about what lenses for cityscapes, how to read a waveform monitor, and why you're seeing black bars when you export your video.
Hey.
Griffin. We gotta stop starting episodes this way, where I'm sad and disappointed. What happened?
What episode was it when I first got the DJI Spark drone? It was episode 24.
Where you
actually
crashed
tried
it
to pilot
live
it.
on the podcast?
Yeah, that was just a bad idea. I did another stupid idea with it. Actually, this shoot was going well and wonderfully professionally.
So this was a professional shoot that this crash happened on.
Yeah. It was a project that a friend of mine asked me if I could shoot at this warehouse. So I actually was able to shoot inside in New York, not against any rules because I'm just inside. But this warehouse, when she said it was a warehouse, I thought like, oh great, I'll have like really high ceilings and I could still get aerial shots. But it turned out it's actually a pretty enclosed space. The ceilings are only maybe 12 feet up or something, so I couldn't really get top-down aerial shots, but I still was able to get some really beautiful shots flying through the space.
Mm-hmm.
They have like this giant screen printing thing. It's like 30 yards long, and they can make fabric. They can do manual screen printing on this really long I don't know what you call it.
Screen printer.
Machine. Yeah. Although it's like the humans are doing the screen printing. So they just wanted to show off this giant piece of equipment they have. So I was in there getting some drone shots. And as they were finishing the screen printing, they have to let the ink dry. And so as they do each section, they turn on more and more fans to help dry the thing. And so eventually there's just fans all over the room that are turned on. And then at this point I realized it was pretty hard to pilot the drone because I don't have any GPS signal inside. So I have obstacle avoidance, but the thing,
it can't hold its position perfectly.
Yeah. So I'm trying to fly in a straight line and I'm just having to fight the wind myself, when normally if I'm outside, the thing actually does a pretty good job of autopiloting kind of in one direction. And I guess in all of this, I was moving up and down this really long subject and didn't realize how fast I was going when I was coming back. And I was with my friend John, who was shooting some behind-the-scenes footage, and it was coming towards us kind of fast. And so for some reason, my instinct wasn't to try to slow it down. My instinct was to look over at him and be like, make sure he's out of the way of this thing. Oh. And he was. And I don't know, it just in that split second, I didn't think very clearly, probably because it was coming backwards. And because it's going backwards, it doesn't
have
do obstacle avoidance in that direction.
Well, at least you didn't crash onto some giant screen printing they just spent hours working on that you would ruin.
Right.
So, what did you crash into?
Just some shelves.
Is it badly broken?
No, the drone's fine. It used this time, unlike when I did it live on the podcast, this time I actually had the blade protectors on.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. And so I heard the blades kind of scrape up against the shelf a little bit, but looking at them now, I think they're fine. This thing is pretty resilient. I mean, I've crashed it a few times into trees. And
I'll be honest, I've crashed mine, I think, 3 times.
Well, you kind of have to just to learn how to fly it.
Well, and I put it in sport mode, which I should just not do, and I just fly it around like super recklessly for fun, and then I crash into trees. It's happened more than once.
This is like in your backyard.
Backyard, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's not broken. That's a positive thing.
Right. And I got all the beautiful shots I needed. But actually,
so are we gonna see this behind the scenes footage of you crashing?
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you're watching the video version of this, you've already seen it.
Oh.
And
little planning
I
there.
mean, I'll play it again right now.
Wow, Griffin, what a great crash.
Yeah. But the real star of this production was, I think I figured out before I got there that the ceilings might not be as high, but also not everything can be shot with a drone very well. So I also brought my Tech crane, the replacement one.
Yep. Okay. Good.
Last week, and I brought my 8 to 18 millimeter lens, and I got a bunch of gimbal shots, and a lot of them actually look like a drone shot. When the lens is that wide, I can hold it up really high, and it feels like you're 15
Flying
feet
around,
off the ground. Yeah, so I did a few that kind of mimic drone shots. There's one shot in particular where I kind of flew past some hanging power cables. Like there's some like AC cables hanging down from the ceiling that you could plug into. And I just thought, like, this is the kind of shot you just wouldn't be able to get in this environment with a drone, because you would fly into them. You'd touch them. But I can take a gimbal inches away from it and make it look like I'm a really good pilot.
Which clearly you are not.
Right. Also, the benefit is I can shoot in 4K with the GH5. I can't shoot 4K on my DJI Spark.
So is this a project we're going to be able to see the final form of, or?
Yeah, I'm sure I can. I'm probably sharing a bunch of the footage in the podcast, but I guess when they actually go and use the finished piece, I can link to that.
Awesome.
So my crane, the replacement one that I bought, I think a lot of the comments we got last week were like, I hope Tech can help you, or hope B&H can help you. And sure enough, both companies, both B&H and Tech, are saying they can replace my broken one, or compensate me, refund me for it. Yeah.
So are you going to sell the second one, or can you return it, or what's the game plan?
Yeah, I think I could just return it. So I'll just keep the second one that I bought.
Beautiful. And
I'm all good. I think even one of the comments I saw was like, does this make you think it's a terrible product? And I just thought, no, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that products break sometimes. Sometimes there's a faulty unit, and I've seen so many people have been very happy with that product. We'll see how the second one goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you could send one to me. Just an idea.
Yeah. You can try to fix it.
You're like, no, I will not. No, they can fix it and give it back to you, and then you send it to me, and then I have one.
Right.
Like magic. See how that worked? It is going to be Christmas time soon.
Yeah. that could be your Christmas present. A broken...
No, I want a fixed version. You don't understand. All right, what are we talking about today, Mr. Hammond?
Well, as long as you feel like you've gotten all your questions answered about my piloting ability, we can.
Yeah, I think I've chastised you
everyone
enough.
Else's questions.
I've chastised you enough. Let's move along.
So our first question today, well, this actually wasn't a question. I just liked this email I got from Hugh. He just wrote to me and said, "Thank you for all your sage advice when I asked. Have a Merry Christmas."
Oh, what a nice email. Thank you, Hugh.
He didn't even have a question this time. It was just, I just thought that was really nice. I'm not saying everyone should do that. I don't need to be inundated with
thank you emails, and then thank yous for the
just thank you emails. But I just thought that was a special email that he just wanted to reach out and say thanks for previous help I've provided.
I wanted to make a joke about, like a herb joke about rosemary advice or something, but that seems silly, so I didn't.
Yeah, I give a lot of herb advice out.
All right, we got a tweet from Sierra Hall. Hey, Griffin, what do you think about using only a 50 millimeter for a casual tourist day out in NYC? He doesn't want anything super bulky on his Canon 60D, but it's his first time in the city, and he wants some cool shots. Is the 60D...
Actually, Sierra is a she.
Did I say he?
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. My bad. I thought I stayed gender neutral, but apparently I did not. What's Canon 60D? Is that a full frame or no?
I don't think it's a full frame, but I imagine it's using full frame focal lengths. Like, I think when she says 50 millimeters, that's equivalent to like a 25 millimeter on the Panasonic system.
Oh, okay. Very good. Well, what do you think?
So my answer back to Sierra was that I have a 25 millimeter prime, and I do find that I carry that around a lot when I want to be a tourist. But it does kind of limit me to just portrait shots. It's a relatively wide portrait lens, but still, it's probably better for taking pictures of your friends' faces, top of skyscrapers. But I always feel like I want like a super wide lens to go along with it. Like I really like my 8 to 18 millimeter.
So you're saying throw one more lens in the bag?
Yeah, I think if you can bring that portrait lens, and then also if you have a wider one, that'd be good.
Sometimes
I even was thinking about two New York.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking about two New York photos that I have that came to mind. One was shot on the 25 millimeter of me by my friend, and it was a nice portrait at what is the fountain called in Central Park? I was thinking of Buckingham Fountain.
That's in Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, I can never remember what it's called. It's the one with that's in Home Alone. Anyway,
I don't know what it's called.
We took a bunch of portraits down there, and then. But then I also shared a picture of the New York Public Library that I took in infrared, and that was with the 8 to 18. I just feel like I need that wide lens to get like a whole building in the sky.
Sometimes it's nice to be limited to only one lens, though, because it kind of forces you to be a little more creative. So I think there are advantages at times to saying, nope, I'm just bringing one lens and seeing what you can do with it. Now, if you're visiting a city and it's kind of your only shot to get those photos, I think maybe bring a couple. But it is fun maybe one day just to go out with a single lens and see what that forces you to do.
Well, yeah, I'm sure plenty of people would be super happy with just a nifty 50 on their Canon for a day out in the city. I just know my personal preference is if I had to choose between the two, I would go with the wide one. I would want something much wider. Which I guess for Canon, that would be like something like a 22 millimeter is what I would want. Here's an email that I got from Joshua. This is actually an email I got today. He was wondering, he exported his 4K film in Premiere, and he has all the correct settings and everything, but he has black bars when he exports it. And he says that he knows that he normally gets that when he exports in 1920 by 1080, but why is he getting that when he exports in 4096 by 2160? Do those numbers make sense to you, Nick?
Oh boy, no they don't. Do I need to get my calculator? I thought you were just gonna, pass me by and answer this question. But
well, here. So we know 1080 HD video is 1920 by 1080. Do you know what ultra high def is? What 4K on a television is?
Yeah, I do, but why don't you tell us?
It's double both those dimensions, 1920 by 1080. So 3840 by 2160. That's 4K, like 16 by 9 shaped video.
Yep. Okay.
Problem is, a lot of filmmakers now are using the GH5, and a lot of the Panasonic cameras have a cinema 4K mode, which is like true 4K because it's really over 4,000 pixels. So it's 4096 by 2160.
So it's significantly wider?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I would call it significantly wider. It's noticeably wider, but not that much more. And the only reason you really notice that it's wider than the 16 by 9 aspect ratio is that if you sit it inside a 16 by 9 edit,
you get
it's going to have black bars on the top and bottom.
Got it.
So I can't figure out which part of the process is screwing him up. Either he has shot... I'm guessing he has shot in 4096 by 2160 and is putting it in a 16 by 9
4K timeline
sequence. And it's adding the black bars in the edit. And then when you export, you have black bars on the top and bottom. Or perhaps he's editing in 4096 and it's trying to squeeze that whole thing. Let's see what... Now I've lost my train of thought.
Anyway, one of those numbers is off.
No. I guess I was thinking he also could be shooting in regular 4K 3840 by 2160. And if you exported in cinema 4K, you would end up with black bars on the side. So it kind of depends on where your black bars are.
Yep. But that will point you in
the
right
way,
direction. Where the black
you're not
bars
matching
are.
up your... whatever you shoot, you probably want to edit that same resolution and export that same resolution, unless you've decided for a specific reason this is going on TV. I don't want it to, be the same size or something.
Got a YouTube comment from Oleg Korzin, Griffin, thank you for your work. Is there a place on the internet where I can show my work, a 1-minute long commercial, and have it reviewed by other filmmakers, especially the intermediate ones like myself? YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is a great place to share your work and get comments. I mean, there's a lot of people there. It's weird because, like, I'm kind of past that point in my career where I'm looking for
feedback,
that kind of feedback. But for me, when I was younger, it was always film fights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I would turn to. I mean, there's a million internet communities where people are making videos and sharing feedback. I mean, even just like all the forums for filmmaking, like DVX User and have there been places you've turned to?
Yeah, I like Reddit, so I'm a Reddit guy.
Oh yeah,
so
you're a Reddit guy.
Reddit.com/r/videography/filmmaking/M43 for Micro Four Thirds. A lot of places I think you could go where people are talking about filmmaking, and you could post a link to your YouTube video and ask for some feedback and expect some good feedback. So we'll put some links in the
I've
show
seen
notes.
a lot of that, even in just like there's a whole bunch of Facebook groups, but I'm a part of a GH5 user group, and people are always sharing the stuff they've shot on the GH5, which is especially useful because other people who know the camera you're shooting on are seeing your work, so they even see it and they go, oh, you need to change this setting to get that look that you want.
I'm part of a Facebook group called the Frugal Filmmaker, which I think is another good one you can check out and post and get some good comments.
Yeah. And if you're going to do that, I think just for good karma, you should also be replying to other people's work when you see it.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be the one asking for all the help and then never giving back to that community. Here is a Twitter comment that I got from Austin, who was wondering if I'd been talking about Apple voice memos, like on an iPhone, and recording sound that way. He seems to remember I was talking about that I had problems with that. Maybe we talked about it on the podcast? You don't remember that on the podcast, do you, Nick?
It doesn't sound familiar, but, I don't always remember everything.
The thing that came to mind is I'm wondering if he was actually talking about, I mean, there's a lot of times I could have been talking about this, but I remembered an Indie Mogul video that I made years ago where I was talking about how I used an app for the iPhone called Recorder Plus. And it was just, I liked it because it would show you a waveform while it was recording.
Okay.
And it gave me it even could show me like what input was coming in on the phone. Like, am I getting the built-in microphone or am I getting the plug-in microphone? So it just gave me some additional features that I guess the built-in recorder didn't give me.
Gotcha. But you never had any issues with voice memos like failing or being low quality or anything?
Yeah, I don't think so. I guess maybe it's just hard to see exactly what you're getting while you're recording. It's hard to monitor it. In fact, maybe that was the other thing. I almost feel like Recorder Plus, the way I had it set up, I almost felt like I could monitor the audio through my headphones as well.
That's handy. And I wonder if maybe you had more gain control or something, as opposed to, I think, voice memos are probably just auto gain the whole thing.
Right. But there's a lot of apps out there, and I mean, I think even Apple Voice Memos, just the built-in app, would also get you some good audio too.
We've got a Twitter comment from Nick Farrell. I have a GH5 and I shoot mainly on the 12 to 35. I've looked for videos on YouTube, but can't seem to find any that explain how to read the GH5's waveform monitor correctly, or what's better to use.
Well, last week we answered a question about exposure, and we said that our preferred way to expose is through the built-in exposure meter on the bottom of the screen, which just kind of tells you a ballpark of how bright or dark your image is. And then the zebra stripes, which show you precisely where you're too hot, where you're clipping.
Right.
And so if you just kind of keep the zebra stripes at bay, then you're generally pretty good. But Nick brings up that another way to look at exposure, there's lots of ways on the camera, including a histogram, but one of the ways on the GH5 is a waveform monitor. And I don't think your camera has a waveform monitor.
It does not. I have a histogram, but no waveform.
And do you know the difference between the two? They're similar.
Now, the waveform, is this similar to the waveform you can get in Final Cut?
Yes, yes.
So I think it's showing like a slice of the image, so it gives some positional information along with the brightness information. Is that correct?
Yeah. In fact, a histogram and a waveform monitor can look very similar in their output sometimes, but a histogram is just showing you on the x-axis the number of pixels at a certain brightness, and then
the y-axis is the brightness. Yeah.
Yeah. Or let's see. No, the y-axis is the number of pixels, and the x-axis is the brightness. So if you see a stack of pixels, big line at the the right side of your histogram chart, it means that most of the pixels in your image are bright.
Yep.
And if it's all smashed to the left, most of the pixels in your image are dark. Waveform is also measuring brightness, but it's measuring brightness on the y-axis, and then it's measuring position on the x-axis. So it's kind of showing you in each part of your image how bright or dark is it, according to the y-axis. I feel like I just made it more complicated.
Yeah, that didn't. This is easier with a visual, I think. So Griffin, go ahead and put a tutorial together, since he can't seem to find one on YouTube.
Yeah,
that'd be a good.
But pretty much, if there's a bright spot in the middle of your image, right in the center, then on a waveform, in the center of the waveform, left and right center, it'll be really high up on the chart because it's bright. And if it's dark in the middle of your image, then the middle of the waveform will be low on the chart. And a lot of times they also have color information just to help you kind of tell what you're
like an RGB waveform.
Yeah, or just like they color code the actual wave. The data that you're seeing could turn like red because there's a rose in your image, or part of the image turns black because the other part of your image is black. But I think the waveform on the GH5 is just monochrome. It's just luminance information. So, in conclusion, you don't need to use the waveform, and you should be able to find a better, more visual explanation than mine just now.
Yeah.
But you don't have to use it. There's other ways to expose. That's just one tool if you're comfortable with that kind of tool.
For run and gun shooting, I prefer the histogram. I know you don't shoot with it on, but I do. I always have the histogram on in the corner just to help me out a little bit.
And I can see, especially for outdoor shooting, when you just kind of can't trust your eyes that you're looking at the screen and it's kind of washed out in bright sunlight. Here is a tweet that we got from Tulasi Ganesh, who asked about the 12 to 35 f2.8 lens. That's the lens you're shooting with right now, right?
Boom, right there.
He has the 12 to 35 f2.8 on the Panasonic G7.
Yep, similar camera.
Which is similar, but doesn't have image stabilization. I think we determined is the big difference between your camera and that camera.
Yep.
And he noticed that it's not doing that well in low light. So how do you handle low light scenarios with your camera? I actually imagine your camera probably performs similarly.
Yeah.
Low light.
I mean, one thing is to get more light. Not always an option. When I was shooting weddings, I would break some rules. Like I would drop my shutter speed. Instead of my shutter speed being double my frame rate, I might take it to my frame rate because I'd rather have an exposed image than with a little bit of blur than an underexposed image with a bunch of noise.
Yeah.
And sometimes f2.8 is a nice lens, but it's not the fastest lens in my bag. So in those real low light scenarios, that might be time to switch to a prime that's an f1.8 or an f1.4.
Right. Well, we talk about the f2.8 lens, this particular lens, the 12-35. I love this lens because it is a very fast lens for a zoom.
For a zoom,
f2.8 is pretty good for a zoom. I mean, a lot of zoom lenses are like f4, so they're twice as dark. So I love this lens for documentary work, but it, like you say, it could be, an f2 lens is twice as bright as that, an f1.4 lens is 4 times brighter than a 2.8. So prime will get you a lot farther in low light. So I wouldn't call this lens like a extreme low light lens. I still do think it does better than many zooms in low light, but yeah, you can't be shooting in no light. You do need to take your subject to a window, or just find the best light you can in every environment.
Yep.
And I do think you probably could push your ISO up to up to 1600 or maybe 3200 and still look okay.
I almost said makes sense, but I caught myself. Don't worry. Yeah, what's the highest ISO you'll shoot at for a pro project on the GH5?
Usually 1600.
Yeah.
I use 1600 on hand cut. I've done that on plenty of projects. I also think that I could probably get away with 3200. It also depends on the shot. Like some shots just, if the shadows are really dark, if they're dark enough, they won't have as much noise. It's kind of like the noise is where the camera's like fighting to try to find some detail.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no detail there, then sometimes it doesn't look bad. So I kind of sometimes I'll switch up the ISO and just see. I can kind of tell on the monitor, is this going to be acceptable or not for what I'm doing.
Interesting. I was shooting at ISO 1600 earlier today. I had a very critical project for a demanding client.
Well, and this is an interesting thing to think about is I shoot with a bunch of light while we're doing the podcast, and you're using the light in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a little tree light next to me shining on this side, but yeah.
So you are finding the best light in your room. That's good.
Yep.
And then
I'm moving
what
it
is your
close,
ISO?
like the light is just out of reach. I've got a little stand light here. My ISO.
Do you know what your ISO?
I just said it. I want to say like 640 right now or so. It's pretty low.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So our ISOs are comparable because I'm actually at ISO 500, but I'm also at an f1.6 aperture. So I should be way brighter than you, but that's why I have a ND filter on my lens.
Yeah, and I'm at f2.8, of course.
In fact, I imagine if I took this ND filter off, 200 ISO wouldn't even be low enough for me, which is why I need this.
You were supposed to ask me, Nick, what was your big important project you shot today? And you didn't.
What was your Hey Nick, what was your big important project?
Griffin, let me tell you. I shot in 4K a 6-year-old cheerleading recital. It was my daughter.
Nice.
So yeah,
that's like
shooting some.
That's a great use for 4K because you probably want to see the whole room, but it's nice to be able to get some detail without having to like zoom in just on your daughter's face.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. So we'll see how that turned out.
What frame rate did you go with?
24 frames a second.
Yeah.
Just seemed right. Get a little cinematic. Maybe I should have gone higher since it's kind of sporting, but I thought it would look nice.
I imagine they're not moving too quick.
No, they're 6. They're not the fastest. They're not very
moves.
good. I mean, I wouldn't say that to her, but they've got some learning to do.
Yeah. Well, our final question today is an email that I actually just got from Curtis, who is a young filmmaker in Toronto and longtime indie mogul and Hey Killer Films fan, and looking to upgrade his current stabilizer, which is a brand I hadn't heard of, but it's the CAME TV, C-A-M-E TV, single 3-axis gimbal. He is upgrading to the Freefly Movi M5 gimbal.
Yep.
And he's got years of use out of this gimbal, but it's time to sell it, and just wondering, where do you turn to sell filmmaking gear?
I'm an eBay guy. They take a decent cut, but for the most part, they've got the biggest audience. I feel like if you're looking, especially for something that's more unique and maybe harder to find a buyer for, I think eBay is going to give you the best chance of finding somebody to bid on it.
Yeah. For years, I sold all my stuff on eBay, and my trick was always to do a 10-day auction, and I think I would start it on a Thursday night around prime time on the East Coast or something like that.
And that would end you on a Sunday, basically?
Yeah. Because when you pick your start time, it also determines your end time. So you want the auction to end on a Sunday. It gives you 2 weekends for people to get on and bid on it, and ends right in prime time on a Sunday.
Sounds smart to me. It's basically what I do. I don't do 10 days, but maybe I should in the future.
I think the idea of 10 is just to get you 2 weekends.
Gotcha.
Like you can also do a 7-day.
7 days are usually what I do. But I think for something more rare, the longer the better.
Yeah. And the only reason I do a really long, you know, I'm trying to stretch it out and get the most eyeballs on it is because I want to get the most bids possible, which also means that I always start my auctions at $0.
Sure, I do as well. And for the most part,
Which
I don't
could
even
sound risky.
I don't set a reserve even anymore because I think it
Yeah, me
limits
neither.
bidding.
Because I'd rather, my experience of buying things on eBay is if I see a auction that has 25 people bidding, I mean, it might kind of discourage me a little bit, but also I recognize in this split second when I've loaded up 5 different options that I could bid on, this one that has 25 bidders, everyone's already fact-checked it. It must be credible if all of these people believe that this is a good thing to purchase. Like, we all trust this seller. So I always think it's a better idea to start at 0 and let a bunch of bids come in, even though these first few bids, there's no way someone's going to walk away with this thing for $10.
Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff I need to put on eBay, and I've just been kind of putting it off. I've got some old computer parts I got to sell. I've got to sell my old Synology. I've got an old iPhone that needs to go up. I should get my button gear and get that stuff on eBay.
Although now that you're on the podcast, like I've found ever since I started doing Indie Mogul, I just kind of realized it was silly to go on eBay for me because I'm paying eBay that fee to help me find people. And suddenly I had an audience of people that were interested in buying these things. So I think the first time I tried it was years ago. I did an Indie Mogul, like I did a YouTube garage sale. Where I literally just walked all of my stuff out to my garage that I was selling, and I was like, hey, you all might want to buy this. Just send me an email. And sure enough, it all sold in minutes.
Really? Well, I think
and I've kind of done that now. Like
I
think a few months ago, I wanted to sell my Sigma 30mm lens that I realized I hadn't used in years. It was just sitting protected in a plastic box in my closet. And so I just put it on Instagram, where I have a good size audience, and I just posted a picture of the lens, said, hey, who wants to buy this? And sure enough, it sold in like 5 minutes.
All right, so I should have you tweet about all my stuff and get it sold.
So actually, that's what I was gonna say for Curtis. If anyone is interested in a 3-axis gimbal, this device actually looks a lot like mine. It looks a lot like the Juntech Crane V2. It's just one of those handheld 3-axis gimbals that does the work electronically. I don't know how much Curtis is selling it for, but if you want to just email me at Griffin at Hey.film, I can just pass you along to him.
Griffin Camera Gear Broker.
Yeah, maybe we can find, and I won't even take a cut.
I will, though.
But
Curtis,
maybe we can find a buyer for Curtis's gimbal.
Thank you.
Although now I'm going down a dangerous road where I don't need everyone sending me their
And somebody's not going to get
selling.
it, and they're going to blame you. It's going to be good. This is going to be fun. Well
Soon
done,
I'm getting
Curtis.
like 20 emails a day with stuff. my Gmail just becomes the next filmmaking eBay.
Oh, boy.
Well, before we go, I want to thank someone who hasn't done anything yet, but I know they're going to.
Okay.
I want to thank John Luna for editing this episode of the podcast.
Thank you, John. John's been doing a great job helping us out.
Yeah. So I haven't even given him credit for all the episodes that he has edited. There's been several episodes in the past many weeks, but generally I haven't known which ones he was going to edit till the next day. Like,
you're like,
if I don't see him tomorrow, I'll edit this.
You can't add it retroactively after he's edited it. It doesn't work that way.
I could. Here, let's record some credits for this show. What should we say? What did we say first?
Let's see. A podcast created by Nick Bodmer. Assistant editor.
The Hey Indie Filmmakers podcast is produced by Nick Bodmer and Griffin Hammond. This week's episode edited by John Luna. Does that sound like credits?
That was good. I was trying to take more credit and kind of make you a lesser part, but you kind of stomped on that.
Oh yeah, to our question last week about how to credit yourself, we should say
take all the credit
shot
you can.
by Griffin Hammond.
Shot
edited by
Nick
Griffin Hammond.
Bodmer.
Audio by Griffin Hammond.
Makeup
Executive
and lighting
producers
by...
Nick Bodmer.
Do you wear makeup?
Series created by.
Get any makeup on there, Griffin?
Today, no. Sometimes I do touch myself up a little bit.
Ooh, I wasn't expecting that. Interesting. There's a future topic. Here's a future
Sometimes
topic.
they may have a blemish here or there.
Oh, we didn't talk about your. Should we save it for next week? Your split in half photo.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that. My latest Instagram post.
Yeah. So you posted an Instagram post with 3 photos, and
Yes.
you looked different in them. And I looked at it, and what you had a little tag. What was your question, or how did you word your caption?
I think I just said, like, do I look different today? Swipe to choose my look for the day or something.
So I'm looking at this, and my brain immediately goes, "Oh, Griffin is showing off focal lengths, right?"
It did kind of look like that.
And then
a lot of the comments were along those
I'm
lines.
staring at these pictures, trying to figure out. I was like, "Wait a minute!" Like, because your ears did start to look different. And I was like, "That's kind of what you expect with different focal." I was like, "I can't figure out which is wide and which is zoomed. Like something weird is going on." And it kind of broke my brain a little bit. And actually,
Yeah, I could see why people would think that, because, like, if you shoot a portrait of someone with a wide-angle lens and you're up really close, it's going to kind of make their face skinnier because you won't see around their head as well. You kind of lose the sides. And then if you back way up and shoot someone with, like, a 100mm lens, they can kind of look a little bit wider because you just see more of the
it
side
flattens
of
out
their
the face.
face.
Basically. You kind of lose
Yeah.
the depth and the distance.
And a wide-angle lens always makes people's noses look longer, which can make them look skinnier in the right angle. But so yeah, one of the faces kind of looked skinnier than the other too.
Yeah, it was interesting. So really, what you had done was what?
Well, my wife Amy and I were playing around because she was saying to me that you can photograph someone's face, and then if you Photoshop one side onto the other side, you can kind of determine what your best side is. Because, like, one version of your face replicated to the other side may look better than the other version.
Which I felt like was the case for you.
Yeah, although I also recognize there are other variables. Like, with me, one side of my face is a little bit lower than the other side.
Yeah, I can see that now. I'm looking at these pictures.
And I've known that for years because, like, when I put a hat on, like, it always sits kind of funny. Like, one of my ears is higher than the other. So inherently, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly where to draw that line. And I think that's part of why one version of me looks a little bit skinnier and one version looks a little bit fatter. Because the line may not be perfectly split down my face. I might just be choosing, one of those pictures literally has more of my face in it. But also because of my eye placement, it does. I think one photo maybe looks more youthful because my eyes are a little bit higher, and then one version, my eyes are a little bit lower. But it is just funny how different I can look.
You got some really cool catch lights in your eyes too. What is that? Is there a ring light or something around the camera?
Yeah, so I'm using a light. A company sent me this light called Specular. It's an Israeli company, and Specular is an LED system that you can, like, click the lights together, kind of like Legos or something.
Oh, okay.
You can build a shape. So they send me 8 of these little pieces, and you could do something like, you could do 4 of them stacked on top, and you'd essentially have a square. Or what I did is you can actually take all 8 and make an octagon, and it becomes this giant octagonal light, which I've been using recently anytime I need a ring light.
Yeah, okay. Zooming in, I can see how it is 8 distinct pieces right in your eye.
Yeah, so you're seeing the actual 8-sided light in my eye reflected in my pupil, and then it's also lighting me. And the reason I'm doing that is because for this test of duplicating my face, one, I didn't want you to be able to see the seam behind my head, so I have a black background behind me. And then 2, I figured the only fair way to do this is to light myself evenly from all sides, so that
is
one
that
side
the
of me doesn't
only
have all
light?
the shadow. Yeah,
It's
it's the only light, but it's effectively like 8 lights because it's wrapped around me.
It looks really.
it's covering.
it's a nice lighting setup. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want to shoot every portrait that way because I think there's a lot of visual interest in shadows. You generally want one side of the face to have some more shadow, but a ring light is an interesting look. You see it a lot in music videos, in some model photography and portraits.
Well, I thought that was a very interesting little test.
Yeah.
So which side do you like? Which is your good side? Your left side or your right side?
I think my right side is the higher side.
Which is the left side when I'm looking at the picture, right?
Wait, now I'm confused. Now I don't even remember which was my good side.
Yeah, I think
maybe it's my left side.
I think it's your right side, but like the leftmost picture.
Okay.
Right? When I'm looking at your face, my left, your right.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, I guess that is my right side.
And your right side duplicated photo just looks very strange.
Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoyed the whole thing. Very good. I thought it was going to be a short episode, and then we went on a tangent.
Yeah. No, this was good.
That was good. Well done, sir.
Thank you. Good job to you. Let's go over those credits again. Let's give ourselves some credit.
Would you describe me as an executive producer?
Sure.
Thank you. That's it? That's all you got for me? Is sure?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Executive producers are like, they run the gamut. Sometimes they do nothing, and they're just like...
Which fits.
On a board.
Which fits for me.
Sometimes they give money. Sometimes they're very creatively involved. You're so much more than executive producer to me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm like the studio head. No. Okay, never mind. All right, Griffin.
No, you're not the studio.
Let's shut her down.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next week for our 46th episode.
Man, getting close to that big 5-0. Getting close.
Well, actually, 48 will be our year.
Ah, okay. That's exciting too.
Well, getting close to that big 4-8.
That big 4-8. All right, Griffin. I will talk to you later, sir.
Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Why can't I be the studio head?
I don't know.
I ask you that.
Like you're in charge of Netflix?